upon a time, in a distant village, lived a faceless king. The people of the village were ruled by a king who no one knew, as the king ruled through a proxy who represented him in front of his people. The king's proxy was known as Iruezi, which means the face of the king. When the king's father was alive, he decided to keep his son's identity a secret, but no one knew the reason behind his decision. The king, after his father's death, decided not to reveal his identity to his people, and many referred to him as the Faceless King. Even the king's Iruezi, who is his representative to the people, had no idea of what the king looked like. He only spoke to the king through a hole in the king's chamber door, and no one dared to come into the king's chamber. One day, the king sent a message to his people through his Iruezi, saying that time had come for him to pick a bride from the maidens in the village. Everyone was shocked, as no one believed that their faceless king would choose a bride someday. Discussions of what the king looked like began to crop up amongst the maidens, who were unsure of if the king was handsome or not. No one knew, and the mystery of the king's identity intrigued all the maidens in the village, who waited to know how the king would select his bride. "My king, the maidens seek to know how you plan to choose your bride," said the king's Iruezi, and the king replied that he would throw a party of maidens where he would choose the maiden that he will marry. All the maidens in the village were excited to hear this, as they began to get ready the beautiful dresses that they would wear to the king's party, most especially the daughter of the king's Iruezi, Adamma. Adamma was extremely beautiful, and all the men in the village wanted to marry her. Adamma had refused to marry any man from the village, as she had always dreamt of marrying an extremely rich man. Adamma had turned down several men because they did not meet up with her requirements for a husband. When Adamma heard that the king was looking for a bride, she immediately picked interest and vowed to do everything within her powers to be the king's wife. Few months earlier, a certain fisherman named Ikenna asked Adamma to marry him, but Adamma turned down his request because he was a poor fisherman. When Ikenna overheard that Adamma had plans of becoming the king's bride, he hurriedly rushed to Adamma's house to plead with her to reconsider her decision. Ikenna's presence infuriated Adamma, who began to insult and call him demeaning names. When Adamma's younger sister Uju overheard her sister insulting Ikenna, she rushed to intervene and pleaded with her sister not to treat Ikenna in such a manner. Ikenna was so hurt by Adamma's words, but he loved Adamma so much. Adamma's sister Uju was kind and compassionate in comparison to Adamma, and it always broke her heart when her sister insulted and treated Ikenna badly because he was poor. Despite all this, Ikenna still came to Adamma's house every day to see if she would change her mind. But Adama's mind was already made up, as she was hell-bent on marrying the king. News began to circulate that the date for the king's party had been set, and tension began to grow in the village. One hot afternoon, whilst Adama was returning from the stream, a hungry-looking man stopped her to beg for some water. Adama was so furious, as she could not understand why a poor beggar would be asking her for water. "How dare you stop me to ask for water? Are you handicapped that you cannot fetch your own water?" She began to wail at the poor beggar, who apologized to her and was about leaving. Adama, being so furious at that point, poured the bucket of water on the beggar as she insulted him and left the scene angrily. The next morning, Ikenna arrived at Adama's house with some fishes. When Adama saw Ikenna and the fishes he had brought, she threw the fishes to his face and told him to feed it to his poor and wretched family. Adama's younger sister Uju saw everything that happened and rushed to help Ikenna. She was not in support of how her sister Adama behaved, especially to those who were poor. This brought tears to Ikenna's eyes, as he could not understand why Adama hated him so much. The day of the king's party came, and Adama wore her best dress. All the maidens stared at Adama because she was so beautiful. They envied her even because they believed that no man would be able to resist her beauty. As the maidens waited for the arrival of the king, a handsome-looking man entered the room wearing a mask on his face. Everyone was shocked, as they all heard that the king would wear a mask at the event to keep his identity a secret. "Is that the king?" They began to murmur between themselves as the man walked around the room looking at all the maidens. Adama, on sighting the man on the mask, quickly approached him, not minding what anyone would say. They began to talk, and at this point, Adama was extremely happy, as her dream of marrying the king was finally becoming a reality. After hours of talking, the man asked Adama to marry him, and she agreed without thinking twice, to the hearing of everyone present at the party. The other maidens were so jealous of Adama, who was basking in the euphoria of the moment. A few minutes later, another man entered into the gathering of the maidens, and the palace guards began to blow their trumpets. Adama was now in a state of confusion, as she wondered who she had agreed to marry a few minutes ago. It was then that the man Adama agreed to marry removed his mask, and Adama noticed that the man was the poor beggar she poured water on few days ago. Adama was full of rage, as she regretted ever agreeing to marry the man. The moment she accepted the man's proposal, Adama rid herself of the opportunity of ever marrying the king, as the king was prohibited from ever marrying a woman who had previously accepted to marry another man, even if the marriage took place or not. Adama's eyes were filled with tears when suddenly the king removed his own mask, and Adama realized that Ikenna was the king. The poor fisherman that Adama had rejected severally and constantly insulted was the king of the village. Adama's brief moment of happiness suddenly turned into a time of sadness and regret. The king, all this time, lived amongst his people as a poor fisherman, and no one knew. He used his time to find a woman who would love him genuinely for who he was, and Adama clearly did not love him. The king then announced that Uju, Adama's younger sister, would be his queen, and this broke Adama's heart, as she wished she could rewind the hands of time to accept Ikenna's proposal. The lesson to be learned from this story is that we should not look down on people. Treat everyone with respect, as we are all humans first before anything else. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It helps us grow our channel. I'll see you in our next story. Bye.